but I'm going to give it a try here. Danielle Rogers is an IT project manager serving as direct line supervisor of large-scale projects for the GE Corporate Information Services PMO Group. Prior to joining General Electric, she held a release management position for the HP Global Product Development Team, providing services to General Motors. In this role, she managed deployments of integrated software application packages and platform standard images to thousands of engineering and design workstations across the globe. Previous to joining the release management team within EDWS, she worked as a project manager within Electronic Data Services, EDS, application development and delivery. During a 2-year span with EDS, she gained many formal hours of training in project management, but also successfully completed multiple projects for carefully defined requirements and demanding constraints. Ms. Rogers earned a Bachelor's of Science degree in mathematics at the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor. Furthermore, she currently holds the Project Management Professional Certification and the ITIL Foundation's Version 3 certification. Lastly, she has participated in the Emerging Leaders Program, ELP, offered by the Ross School of Business Executive Education. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to enthusiastically welcome Danielle Rogers.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Does anybody know if we run the TTU desk or?
Yes.
Thanks for having me here today, and today we're going to discuss the DISC styles. So we will get into the definition of the DISC styles, but basically, as you can see on the screen here, we have just a picture of zebras, and although they may look the same, they have definitely different stripes. And the reason for showing this is that to really understand that the people that you interact with at work, they're definitely different than you. And the DISC styles that we'll talk about today will help out in just understanding the different behaviors that others seem to implement when they are working with you, but also how you can react to that and work with them in a much better format. So today, I've placed a link to the assessment below. If you want to go online and take the DISC assessment, it'll tell you your personality style or your DISC style, and so that'll help understand you in particular. But today, I'm going to help you understand your own DISC style just by understanding what the different styles mean. There's a D, an I, an S, and a C style. And it's just going to help you understand your style and help you interact with others. And it will also improve your ability to recognize and adjust your communication to the behaviors of those who you meet while you're working in the corporate America. And the presentation will be available after if you would like to take the DISC assessment. And just to go over a little bit with the DISC assessment before we go into this. The DISC assessment, there are a couple different DISC assessments that you could do. One of them, which is the link that I've given at the bottom of the presentation, it will give you a percentage of each letter. There's a D, an I, an S, and a C. And so it may give you a 40% of the D, and that may mean that you're a high D, and all of the other percentages would be something lower, but adding up to 60. Or you can take another assessment, and it will actually give you a percentage for each particular letter. So for D, you can be 60%, but for I, you can also be 70% and whatnot. It will give you each letter out of 100, and that will tell you which one, are you a high D, a low D, and I'll define that going forward in the presentation. But the point is to understand your style and to be able to recognize others. And so what this is, and we'll talk a little bit about what it's not. So it's a tool that will provide you detailed feedback on your leadership communication. So whether you are a software developer or a project manager, although you may not be, your title could include something with a leadership type phrase, but everyone leads someone in their day-to-day operations. So you may do negotiating or influencing or coaching or anything in that particular nature, and it's all about leadership. So this is going to give you detailed feedback on your leadership preferences. It's also an opportunity to understand your style tendencies when working with others. So you may not be aware of certain things that you do when you're interacting with other people, but this will give you a hint of that, and also how you may want to change that depending on who you're speaking with. It's a universal language. The DISC styles are very common, so it's good to know your letters. Sometimes you may speak with people, whether it be in another country or not, and they'll ask you what's your DISC style. So you'll be able to tell if you're a D, an I, an S, or a C. It's very neutral. There's no right or wrong answer in this particular assessment. And it's observable behavior. So I think by the time we finish here, I'll have a little example at the end. It's almost like a quiz, so to speak. And you'll be able to tell based upon the different definitions what that person is. What this is not. It is not a measure of intelligence. Sometimes when people take these assessments, they think that they need to be 100% in each letter, for instance. But that is not the case. You need a balance of all of these different letters. But it's more so about flexing to that particular style if you're working with someone who's more of a D or an I or S. It's not an indicator of your values. Just because you like challenges a little more than the next person, that doesn't mean you have different values or what's good and what's bad. It's not a measurement of your skill and experience level. No matter what experience level you are, you definitely have some piece of each of these particular styles. And it's definitely not a measure of your education or training, because this is something that it's not that you'll learn how to do these things in school and whatnot, but it's just you experience these different things as you go throughout your career, and anyone can adapt these particular styles. So, benefits and so the benefits of receiving the DISC feedback. It reinforces behaviors that you are aware of, that you may be aware of or you may not be aware of. It identifies behaviors that promote effective leadership. So as you're going through these particular positions in your career, there are certain behaviors that you definitely should exude, and there are those that you shouldn't. This one will make you aware of that, and so that you can exude the right particular behavior at the right time. And it identifies blind spots. Sometimes it takes an assessment to really learn what type of person you are in dealing with your communications and whatnot. You may get feedback during 360 reviews and whatnot, but this is an assessment that you can look at, and it'll give you things that you can work on being that particular type style, and things that you may want to be a little bit more aware of. So here are the 4 DISC styles. So the first one is dominance. Dominance says how you respond to problems or challenges. So sometimes you may, and we'll go through each of these particular styles, but it talks about how you respond to challenges. So maybe you're a person who loves challenges, you love the opportunity to be promoted or to go into different challenging roles, or maybe you're not that type of person. There's the influence, and it shows a little bit more about how you influence others to see your point of view. So no matter what position you are in, I'm sure you work with leadership or you work with your team members, and you may need to influence them to make certain decisions. Well, how do you go about doing that? Your steadiness. So it talks about how you work in different paces of environments. So for instance, you may go to a company that is very fast-paced, and it may not sit well with you at all. You may not be a person who is a low I. You could be a high I, which means you like a steady environment. You're a little bit more happy when things are the same almost day to day. And then the compliance. So this talks about how you respond to rules and procedures. So there are rules in every particular company, and some positions allow you to be a little bit more creative than others. So compliance tells a little bit about how you respond to those rules and guidelines. So that's an overview, but let's talk about them in detail the next three spots. So dominance. So each particular slide that I have for this particular, the dominance, the influence, steadiness, and compliance, I have this type of slide. And it'll tell if you're a high D or you're a low D. And a high D meaning you have a high percentage if you score in that particular category, that particular style. And it gives you certain traits. So we can talk about these, but also you'll notice that I have the expectations of others, conflict response, needs-driven behavior, and stress reliever. Those are on all the slides. And so we'll talk about those type of things and what you prefer if you're a dominant, you're a steady, etc. So if you're a high dominance person, you like to make very quick decisions. You're a little bit more competitive than others. You're results oriented. You really crave challenges. So we all have met someone in our careers where there's someone like that in their particular career. They like to make decisions quickly. And if you have something that you need to actually take some time to discuss, to think about, things of that nature, you're working with a high D person, you're going to have to figure out how to flex to really work with that particular person. So you can kind of think about their ideal work environment. They like frequent challenges, advancement. It can be daring or adventurous. You may want to send them off to the side to work on a more challenging project if things aren't quite as challenging as they would like. Whereas if you're a low D, you like to weigh the pros and cons. You're definitely a little bit more low-key, cautious. You want to be in a peace, cooperative environment. And your ideal work environment will be part of a team, low conflict, a slower pace, things of that nature. So as far as how you deal with stress, you would be a physical activity. Or your needs-driven behavior, a person, if you find a high D type person, they need to be in an environment where they have challenges. So you can't give them the same type of task every single day. You need to give them challenges because that's the way that they're going to strive in your organization. So if you have someone on your team like that, definitely need to be aware of that. And let's move on to the next one. And also, just one more thing about the conflict response. For a person who's high dominance, they, for conflict, they may even create conflict, or if they're in the middle of a conflict, they're going to fight it out to the end. So you kind of have to know when you're dealing with a high dominance person. You could be arguing forever if you don't recognize a different style and try to react to that appropriately.
So who would you consider, another person would be considered a high dominance person?
People who are like chief information officers or chief technology officers, they get in the room and they need things done now, and so you kind of have to figure out and you will get to this, but if you're a little bit more calm and relaxed and you go to a person who's like a CIO and they're a high dominance, they're not really it's not going to work so right.
So Steve Jobs would be considered a high dominance.
Steve Jobs for sure. And someone like Jack Welch probably too, but basically those people, you know those type of people. Most people think they're aggressive. They think they're assertive. Okay, influence. So influence folks are a little bit different. They care about personalities and relationships. So they want to be liked, as opposed to the high dominant person who just wants things done right and they want it done fast. The high influence people, they want to be liked. They like to make favorable impressions. They're very talkative. They're motivational. You can do it. Optimistic. That's a type of a high person. So their ideal work environment is social recognition. They like freedom of control. They value coaching. They like to express themselves verbally. And also, I forgot to mention on the last slide, I have quotes at the bottom of what these type of people generally say. And so this type of person says, strangers are just friends that I haven't met yet. Because that's just the kind of person a high I is. But a low I person, they like to speak the facts. They're not so into emotions. They speak directly. They're like a logical type person. They provide realistic ways of looking at things. They're a little bit pessimistic compared to a high I who's a little bit more optimistic. And their quote is, "This isn't show friends, it's show business." So you have to definitely recognize if you're dealing with a person like that, two different personalities, whether you're working with resources and you need to know which resources to put on a project. You probably don't want to put a high I person with a high D person. it's just not going to work out as great. And their stress reliever, talking. They like to talk to people. So if you have a person who has a high I and you see their stress, you can see it on their face. Bring them into your office, have a conversation with them, and that's going to calm them down. And conflict response, whereas the high B's will create the conflict and they will fight it out, the low I's, they will avoid it as much as they can because they're not really in a conflict. They're more so just want to be happy relations, optimistic type people. So your steadiness, and this is how you respond to the pace of the environment. A steady person, they're very patient, helpful, they're good listeners. Their ideal work environment, steady. The same routine every day, that's the type of person, or a steady person. As opposed to the who like challenges and keeps it a little bit variable. They avoid a little bit their minimal conflict and they like stable environments. So their quote is, can we all just get along? And in the low I, they're more so, they crave challenges, they're a little bit closer to the B, they're restless, self-promoting, flexible, they like to see the big picture, they're creative, they crave for compliments, and they're kind of creative, a little bit more creative. They want to, their quote is, have we thought about doing it this way? For a conflict response, they volunteer to get it over with. So if there's a task that nobody wants to do and they're going back and forth about who's going to do what, they'll just say, okay, I'll do it, just to get it over with. Needs-driven behavior, accommodation. They like accommodation. Physical rest is their stress reliever. So if you have a person who is a high S, then that means that, if they're stressed, they probably need a break. They probably just need to take a half day off or something like that. Whereas your D's, they would probably need to go take a trip to the gym and kind of run it off with physical activity. And the last one is the compliance. So compliance is about how you respond to rules and guidelines and things of that nature. So a high C person, they're very careful, they are accurate and systematic, very analytical type folks. They follow the rest of the rules. So if you are managing a person who is a high C type person, you would basically want to create some rules. Because if you create a rule for a high C person, they're going to follow the rules. So they like structure. They can demonstrate expertise. They play by the book. And their whole model is, instead of trying to do it this way, that way, just jumping into it, they want to do it right the first time. And then the low C, they see policies as guidelines. So they don't really, the whole idea of looking into the rules and following it book by book, it's just a guideline for them. And whether you follow it or not, it's not really a big deal to them. They're creative, self-starters. They delegate the details. They don't really pay attention too much to detail. Their ideal work environment to be flexible, open to new approaches, and focus on the vision versus the details, the high-level vision. And so their whole idea is rules are meant to be fit. And so, like I said, if you have a high C person, their needs-driven behavior is rules. If they're stressed, and I know particularly I am a high C person. If they're stressed and they need a relief, they just want to be alone. So if you have a high I person who likes to talk when they're stressed, and you have a high C person who likes to be alone, you just have to really be able to tell the two types of people. Because you don't want to go to a high C person and say, let's talk. You just don't want to do that. Because they want to be alone. Just give them time alone and they'll talk. And then the conflict, they avoid it at all costs. They don't like conflict, so they'll just kind of check out and just be thrown with it. So as far as, that's just the definition, but here's a slide that's going to help you be able to kind of tell what person on your team is a high B, what person is a high C, a high S. So if you look at these different ones, we have dominance, influence, steadiness, and compliance across the top. And you can tell the type of person that you're dealing with by small things. Like, for instance, their appearance. A person who is influenced, they're a little bit more fashionable, a little bit more stylish. They're talkative. That's how the high eyes are. The workspace environment for a person who's a compliant person, You go to their desk and it's extremely neat, organized, it's structured. You'll be able to tell right away what your team members are, and you'll be able to kind of react to them accordingly. They have different things on this particular slide. You can read this over later, but decisions they'll talk about the different types of decisions. They wants to maintain, for instance, a person who is a compliance, they like to maintain credibility, whereas a dominance person, they just want to maintain success and move up to the top. The fear of a person who is an influence person, they fear the loss of prestige. You know, they like relationships and everyone to like them. So, you know, if you're a high I person, you definitely fear that. And so, yeah, this is a good way you'll be able to tell. And moving on to the next slide, it kind of shows, well, the next slide. The next slide after this activity. So this activity is just an opportunity to see if you will be able to tell, just after this 10-minute presentation, to be able to tell what type of person you're dealing with. If you were to be stepping into an elevator on a busy business morning. And so let's go through this. It's as you know, it's a D and I, and S and C type person. So each particular slide that I go through is going to give an example of a D, an I, an S, or a C. And you're going to be able to tell which one it is. So on a busy morning, what type of person walks up, gets on the elevator, and just pushes the door closed? A D. What type of person will count the number of people in the elevator, and if it exceeds the limit, make someone get off? Compliance. That's correct. What type of person holds the elevator to let others in, and they say, there's always room for one more? An I, right? And the last one is waits in line, but if it's too crowded, they'll take the stairs. They're steady. So these are just a simple way, you know, everyone gets on an elevator, depending on where you work, you get on an elevator, and you can easily tell right away what kind of person you're dealing with. And the whole purpose of this is to really be able to flex. So why is this important? So it's important to understand your own communication preferences. It really and truly is, and that's why I would suggest taking the assessment. But it's really more important to understand the preferences of others. Because when you are influencing others, negotiating with others, coaching, if you can't really react to their particular style, if they don't like conflict, or if they love challenges, or if they like to be let alone, you have to know these different things, or else the chances of you really being able to influence that person will decrease. So it's really important to understand that. And then mirroring, that's one of the ways that effective people communicate. So it's not just mimicking them, or saying whatever they say, or repeating whatever they say. It's about kind of looking at their verbal cues, looking at their body language, kind of letting them know that you're the same. So if you have a high D type person, and you're talking to a person who's more calm, you don't want to go in with your high D personality. Because that person who's a little bit more calm is probably not going to respond to that to you. So it's all about mirroring and really trying to understand who you're working with. And I have to do that a lot because and I'm sure some of you work with people in India. Most people from India, they're a little bit more calm, a lot of them are. So, you know, you have to realize when to do the high D, or when to go a little bit more to the steady type of, you know, personality. And then stop flexing. So they call it flexing. When you flex with somebody else's personality style, that's you when you're able to temporarily move away from your own behavior and recognize what that is, and recognize that of the other person and flex to their particular style. And it's definitely going to increase your chances of being successful in working with that person. And if a person sees that you're not really able to flex, it just can be the opposite effect. Not really able to accomplish what you want to accomplish. And so why is this all important? Well, when speaking to others, I'm sure you heard this, what you say is only 7% of it, but 93% is how you say it. And so that has a lot to do with your personality style, your disc style. So from a visual perspective, you have your eye movement, your posture, facial expressions, hand gestures, body movement, personal distance. And from a verbal perspective, you have your volume, your inflection, your pace, your tone. I mean, those things definitely differ depending upon which style you are. And being able to adjust these is really going to help your communication, because communication is 93% of this. And so some food for thought to conclude the presentation. So So what is the personality of your team members? And notice that I didn't say food for thought, what is the personality of yours? Because a lot of this is really understanding that of others. You can understand your own, but to be able to flex, you have to be able to recognize that of the other person and flex to that. So what is the personality of your team members that you work with? How do you assess your team members in a virtual environment? Most of us work in a virtual environment, being in IT, and so there are certain ways to definitely be able to tell what personality you're working with. There are people who have a little bit lower terms of void. They don't respond well to deadlines very quickly, things like that. You know, what kind of things can you pick up on in a virtual environment to really tell the style that you're working with? And lastly, is there an opportunity for you to flex? So maybe you're thinking now, after you see the presentation, perhaps you notice right now that your boss is a high D and that you're not. So how can you flex when you work with your boss to make it a better relationship? Or how can you flex when you're working with your team members and things of that nature to make your relationship a little bit better? So that concludes my presentation. So thanks everybody for joining. Do you have any questions? Coaching is really huge because with coaching, you truly have to understand the style of your other person before you go into influencing. Most of the time with coaching, they teach you to first ask the person a couple questions, kind of learn that person, get a little rapport, understand their background and things of that nature. And once you figure out their style, you'll be able to reflect that and really flex into that particular position. And so I have taken a couple courses with coaching, and they always have an assessment at the beginning to kind of understand what you do first before you understand that of others.
What about cultures?
Coaches?
Cultures.
Oh, cultures. I thought you said coaches. So cultures is huge because, I mean, most of it, I work with people all over the globe. Right now, particularly, I happen to be working with folks in India. And many times with the folks in India, we always have to tell them, be a little bit more outspoken. You know, there are always the people in the team who just says, okay, and even understanding what no and yes mean in their different languages and whatnot. So if you take a little time out at the beginning of your project, get to know your team members, whether they be in a certain country or not, understanding your different culture right off the bat is going to help you a lot. You should definitely be able to, you can probably look up the different cultures and understand which ones are a little bit more likely to be from a certain country. And so it plays into it a lot. Okay. But it's easy to tell, I think.
I was listening to the presentation. A lot of my team members are also from India.
Mm-hmm.
And I was trying to map to their personalities, and I really didn't quite.
Oh, really? Because I think it's steady. I think they seem, we can look at this chart a little bit more. They're definitely, from what I've experienced, the dominant style, one in every like 10, 20 folks maybe a dominant style. But they seem to be a little bit more compliant or steadiness. You tell them what to do, and they'll follow the rules. Like you say they need an email by 3 p.m., they'll make sure they get it by that particular time because you said it was by that particular time. That's what it seems to be. They seem like they just follow the rules a little bit more, and that's all that'll make them happy. I also know that they place a lot of emphasis on the customer in India. The customer to them in India is like God to them. So they are all about doing whatever the customer wants. So they follow the rules. You know, whatever the customer asks, they get it done.
I'm finding that they have a problem being honest.
Yeah, I think I don't know if you mean the part where when you ask them a certain thing, when yes and no, because they do have this whole difference with the whole yes and no. To them, saying no is almost like disrespectful, so although they know they can't really do it, they might say, yeah, sure. So it is a cultural thing that you definitely have to understand what are the right questions to ask, because a yes and no question to a person in India won't go over so well.
That's true.
Any other questions or comments?
I worked for a boss who was into the different personality assessments. So a long time ago, I had some, and it was just a big eye opener. And I'm in engineering, and I'm the furthest thing from engineering personality.
Oh,
And so it's even more so a struggle for me because I'm getting older. And I guess it would be more like a steadiness or compliance. I mean, in the past, I would just be compliant. I would just go by the rules. And, you know, because of everything the company's been doing the past few years, everything is kind of in an upheaval. It's completely different, very cost conscious. You know, there's less people, you got all these other responsibilities you didn't have before. And I find my work pace has slowed down. And I've gone from a very nice, mild-mannered boss who just retired from the company after almost 40 years to having, actually I had a man, now I have a woman, and she's trying to, make a good impression. And her boss over her is very, very dominant personality. And so she's, trying to, appease him. It's that she's coming to me and I'm slow and, and it's like, it's probably, for her, it's probably the worst thing that can happen to her to have me on her team.
well, there's really an opportunity there. I mean, because I think one thing with these personality assessments, it's really good to understand what you are and what other people are, because it can be really taken offensive. You can almost think that a high D person, when you are a steady person, you could think a high D person has something against you or whatnot. Hopefully, your boss has taken some training in this particular area to recognize your personality style. And if he or she hasn't, this is something simple that you can even volunteer as a team building activity. Let's figure out our styles and let's learn about them so that we can learn to interact with others. I mean, it can be a good activity to do with your team.
Definitely gonna have to work on that.
Absolutely.
I find these assessments interesting when you take them, a few years later. You take one now and then you take one maybe 10 years later and compare where you are, and there's sometimes a big difference.
Not only is it a big difference when you take it over time, but if you take it in a different frame of mind. If you are in a happy work environment and you take this assessment, you may come off as someone who's steady. But if you're in a high stress environment, things are going fast, you may come off as dominant. I mean, it really depends on which particular time you take it. It takes, not only is it in a different time as far as experience, the job you're working on, but even a physical location. If you take the assessment at home, you may come out with a different assessment than if you were taking it at work.
Wow.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. Any more questions?
Oh, another question, but just to let everybody know, the Tigers are going to the World Series. Final score 8-1.
What was the score? It was 6-0 when I left.
Wow. That's Tigers. That's amazing.
Amazing.
That's
It
awesome.
is amazing.
Yeah.
So my question is more on the grounds what Barry was talking about. What do you adapt to, especially you're black and you're trying to get into these new startups? Basically, startups are almost high everything, especially high D and high.
Yes, absolutely.
And how do you adjust that? Because as a black person, you come off that way, they don't look at you the same way as their white counterpart.
Right. I mean, you're right. You can't do this across the board. And you can't think that going to talk to somebody who's Indian is going to be the same as Caucasian and everything else. Honestly, it takes time, first of all, to be able to understand which way to reflect, to go through different folds. But it's really just the knowledge of knowing this. Like, just knowing the difference in the personalities and whatnot, and recognizing that one person may say something to you and it may sound a little bit high strong, but that's just a personality, and not taking offense to it. That's just going to make a world of difference than if you were to actually not know about these particular personality styles and not really be able to respond differently to that. So, but as far as particularly how to do it, it's nothing across the board. I mean, if you really learn this through experience and noticing that you have better results by working with somebody who's different. In this particular case, where we have a steady person working with a high dominance person, I mean, that is just probably the most tough thing to do. It's probably tough to flex to the dominance, but it's possible. So, it's definitely something to really work on. And even working in different cultures, like you mentioned, I mean, it is definitely very common and organized, so you have to be a little bit careful, especially being like African American female. You don't want to come off as the black bee per se. So, and you have to kind of, it's nothing across the board, that's for sure. Any more other comments? Any other comments?
The female usually fit in one category and man another category.
I don't know that answer. I hate to even lie, so I am not sure about that one. Didn't look that up. Don't know if the females would be towards a different one. I'm guessing, being more men in the environment, in the corporate American environment and whatnot, probably more so men would be more dominant, but it's really hard to say.
I'm sorry.
Okay, I just have a comment actually about what you were saying about taking the test and letting some years go by and you taking it again. So I used to always be an I, like, all over, influence. When I was in a professional sales business, and so I was all I. That's actually where I learned this. And then over time, like building in my IT career and now project manager, so I'm still an I, but I'm more a DI. I don't fit any of the other two, but D and I, they always go to that.
Yeah, it's interesting you mention that because it's always different across professions. I mean, if you talk to a person in sales, hopefully they're an influence type person, So it is certainly different across. And I know with working in General Electric, everyone, we don't say dominance per se, but we always say General Electric is full of people who are type A personality. I mean, that's just the type of person we tend to go towards. So, I mean, it would definitely go towards the dominant style for us.
And that's what I was going to ask. Do you think employers are knowledgeable about these personality types and are seeking people in different personality types for their business?
Well, at General Electric, I've taken some training on hiring folks, and they definitely talk about knowing your style so that you don't hire someone who's a 100% different style than you. If you are not able to flex, because one thing they do teach you as a leader, as a hiring manager, and things like that, is that you should know how to flex. So you really shouldn't be not hiring someone because you're a D and they're an S. You should really know how to flex to that particular person. And that's why I mentioned your boss might benefit from taking this survey or this assessment, because everyone should know how to flex to these different personality styles.
Yeah, I think this is the first time she's in
That's not good.
Yeah, and people keep asking me what do I think about our new boss, so I kind of get the feeling they think I should have an opinion about how she treats me because they keep asking me. So.
You should definitely do the assessment with everyone, and that way it's not pointing it out to someone, you're so dominant, and I'm just, it's not really pointing out like that, but it's just a way for people to become aware, just knowing it's half the battle. So, any additional comments or questions? Okay, well, thank you very much.
Danielle, I'd like to thank you so much for coming and bearing with us. We're small in number. We really have some dynamic people here, and we really appreciate the information that you presented to us. And I know that's for me is going to be very helpful to me in the workplace. And so I'd like to take this opportunity to present this certificate of appreciation to you on behalf of our President Beverly Moore and our members here. The certificate says Black Data Processing Associates, Detroit Chapter, presents this award to Danielle Rogers With sincere appreciation for your presentation at our information exchange meeting held on October 18, 2012. And it's signed by our president.
Thank you very much. I really
All right.
got it.
There we do it.
Take two.
Okay.
And I'd like to continue on the meeting, and I'd like to present our president, Beverly Moore.
Thank you, Leslie. Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Thank you for coming out for our program meeting. I'd like to take a moment and get to know our guests. Is anyone here, you're here for the first time?
Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. Can you tell us about yourself and how you found out about the meeting?
I'm a participant at Challenge Detroit, and Michelle is my mentor. So 4 days a week I work with strategic staffing solutions. I'm an intern, but I'm helping with recruiting for their IT side. And yeah, I heard about it. I heard about this program from Michelle.
Okay.
And your name?
Jenny
Jenny
Chan.
Chan.
Mhm.
Nice to meet you. Thanks for coming. You've been here before,
My name's Tony Smith. I work for the city of Detroit. Been a long time ago. I know about the BDPA now.
for a while. Okay, you sent an email? Great, great. BDPA is a national organization. It was founded in 1974 by Earl Pace and David Wimberly when they attended a technical conference, and they noticed that they were not well represented by minorities. So they founded BDPA to help promote minorities in IT. We have about 45 chapters across the United States. So any city, major city you go in, there is a BDPA BDPA chapter, which is good for networking. In the Detroit chapter, we have programs that we have. We have this monthly meeting here, and we also have our high school computer competition, which is another program we have. And then within the chapter, we have our different committees that are working. And at this point, I would like to bring up our different committees so they can talk about some of the things that they're doing in the chapter. Cliff?
I just stand up from here. Clifford Sanders Jr. I'm currently the VP of what's called the Technology Automation Committee. And we work to help bring a little more depth to your technical knowledge. So we try to hold technical seminars and workshops, and then also we go out in the neighborhoods and help solve their digital and technology needs. And currently I've been working with a group called the Digital Detroit Justice Coalition, and we've been out there doing what they call discotheques. This is what they call Discover Technologists, a fair in which we get together at different locations of Detroit, have some hands-on, and then also just knowledge things to help empower the community. So I've been there the last 3 or 4 events, just showing folks how to use the internet for gaining knowledge. Because a lot of people will get the internet and just go to YouTube and don't realize, there's an educational part to YouTube too that you can learn. And there's the Khan Academy where you can brush up and learn anything from basic mathematics to differential equations. So that's a BDPA, and we're here, as I said, to help the community, the Detroit community in general, and get your geekiness on too also.
Thank you, Cliff. Michelle?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Michelle Morgan, and I serve as the VP of Finance, fundraising, all of the funds that need to go take place in BDPA. So what we are doing, we're working on a fundraiser. I have been working with, and we continue working with our fundraising champion for the entire BDPA organization, where we go out and where he identifies funding capacities, funding sources for the organization that each chapter can potentially tap. And that's really good, because, the economy is down and, corporate giving is down. So, but there's also still money out there, and it's just a matter of knowing where to go to get it. So, if you have any fundraising, grant writing experience, would like to help out, that would be something that I would help with, or that I would need some help with as well. So, that is it.
Okay. Thank you. Leslie.
Hi again, I'm Leslie Hampton, and I'm VP of the Program Committee. And what we're trying to do is, basically our role is to help to run the meeting, the IB meeting, and to come up with the topics for the program, and hopefully come up with some ideas that you find beneficial, information that you need that will be helpful to you. So one thing I'm going to start doing is working on getting the agenda every week, and at least you'll kind of know what the flow of the meeting is. And then you'll notice I did note what the topics are going to be for some of the upcoming meetings at the bottom. Hopefully, as I get better at this, I'll also have the guest speakers' names as well, so you'll know what's coming up. And then also, you can always look on the BDPA website and find the information that Cliff puts out there, maintains the website. So that's always an easy way to find out what's going on. And then I would also, I think I'll just start having at the meeting, just have a little sheet, so anyone can pick one up, and you're welcome to write down topics or presenters that you're interested in, and give it back to me or to anyone that's on the board, and we'll try to get those on. And it's possible sometimes you may even have 2 topics, at a meeting, depending on how that works out. So that's what we do on the program committee, and if you're interested in working on that, I'm also interested in trying to develop my speaking ability. I need to work on that. So it's an opportunity to get out in front of people and in a benign environment and in a family environment. Practice up on your skills. So please consider our committee. Thanks.
Very good. We also have one other guest with us, and a member, and Lorraine. Lorraine is our Vice President of Finance for National. Hello. Can you talk about some of the things going on with National?
We just need money. I want to say that every time I do anything, that was a conference call. I was in this meeting and on a conference call. That's why y'all heard that. I was trying to do 2 things. Can't do like Cliff did. But National do a lot of things on the national level. They know about Detroit information before I knew about it. And that's because a lot of the things are hitting the national website, which I really appreciate that, Cliff, because a lot of things they get before I'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, that is neat. But on the national, we're getting ready for our 4th quarter meeting, which is in Orlando next month. They're going to spotlight a lot of the HSCC coordinators. They're changing around the HSCC program. So that might not happen in 2013, but it will happen in 2014. And Tanji she will be at that meeting. So that would be a good thing. But right now, we're just doing what we do, been busy. A lot of just capturing money and, I'm trying to pull money in for it,
We just finished our national conference and
Yeah, we had our national conference in Baltimore, end of July to August. The next conference is going to be mid-August in Washington, D.C. This conference this year was really good, really netted pretty big for the national office. We've been able to get maybe in the last 2 months additional 10 sponsors that came on. So that's been big, that's been huge. So hopefully we'll do a lot better next year. Other than that, that's all that's going on with national right now.
thank
So
you.
Detroit is number.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, our high school computer competition is our crown jewel program, and that's a program where we take high school students and we put them through a program or train them that goes generally from January to July, and they meet every Saturday and they prepare to compete at the national conference, which when they compete at the national conference, there's usually anywhere from 20 to 25 teams that they're competing against. This year, our team came in 10th place, which is not nearly as where we normally fall at. We usually fall within the top 3. So, but our students, we had 3 students go this year, and 2 of them were new, had never been on the team before. So that kind of a learning curve, big learning curve, a lot of excitement. And so they're also going to be coming back for next year. So I'm saying all that to say that if you know of some high school students that is thinking of computers as a career, or they like working with computers, this would be the time to introduce them to our high school computer competition, because we're getting ready to start that up again. We're going to be starting it earlier this year than we have in the past, because we're finding out that students are their dance cards are getting full early. They got a lot of other programs going on, so by the time we get to them in January, they really don't have a lot of room left. So we're starting to, we want to get them, make them aware of our program a lot sooner. So if you know some friends, family members that have high school students, please share that. That's pretty much all I have. Is there any announcements from anyone?
Oh, I'm sorry, the computer competition, on Saturdays until at Concord,
It's either going to be at Concord or it's going to be at the FedEx. The coordinator owns a FedEx, and he was saying that they might be training at his facility on Jefferson. So they'll definitely be trained. The training classes will be in the Detroit area.
Okay.
And it's usually every Saturday from like 9 to 2.
Okay. Yeah.
As I said, I'm working at S3, so I'm working on recruiting candidates. So right now I'm looking for a senior developer for Java Flex and SQL. So if you know of anyone, I sent the job description to Michelle earlier, but I can send it to your group again. So I'm also looking for a .NET programmer for BTE in Ann Arbor to do kind of energy trading. So if you know of any people with .NET skills, send them away. And also Java Flex, SQL, and iOS app developer.
Wow. Okay.
So you have the email address, right?
Right. Okay, excellent. We'll make sure that gets to Cliff,
Okay.
and we can put it on our website.
Great. Great.
Okay. That's pretty much all I have. You're welcome to hang around and network.
Okay.
Thank you.